Welcome to the London Horror Movie Club. I'm horror writer Lauren Jane Barnett.
And I'm Chris Sapikowski, Lauren's older brother, and I've been watching horror movies since I was 8.
Join us as we talk about the wild, weird, and wonderful horror films set in England's eerie capital.
Hi, horror fans. Welcome back. It's December, and Chris and I are going to be talking about A Clockwork Orange. We've been promising this one to you, so I know you've been looking forward to it. This is Stanley Kubrick's Clockwork Orange. I don't know that there's any others, but it's very much a Kubrick film. It came out in 71 in America, 72 here in Britain, and it is at best described probably as a dystopian-style futuristic horror film that follows Alex and his gang of droogs as they sort of wreak havoc on London, and then Alex himself gets arrested and they try and brainwash the violence out of him. It's also, though, the particular episode going to be a fun one because we're going to, in honor of December, we're going to tackle at the end. Chris and I have been racking our brains for our top 5 Christmas horrors, so you're getting quite a lot
Yes.
in one episode. So
Very hard to come up with top 5. I'm just going to throw that out there right now.
It was. I will bear warning, and we'll talk about this later, but both of us came to this, like, right now, having lists longer than 5. So
Yep.
we'll see what makes the cut.
And what makes the cut to the top 5? Because, there are so many, but not so many great ones. So,
Yeah.
but let's go to Clockwork Orange. I'm actually excited to talk about this movie because we were talking about it briefly beforehand that growing up, this was a movie that I happened to see that was England, was London to me. Like it was the accents, it was the voices. It's very set in specific timing, like the 70s. So like it just I don't know. Like I always thought when I saw that movie, I always thought England and London. So I was excited to go back and watch it with something I hadn't seen in probably a decade, like in passing, and sat down from the beginning to the end, watched the whole thing nonstop. So I don't know if I classify it a horror anymore. As I get a little older, and ultra violence is a main topic in the film.
Yeah.
And we're very jaded people because we watch horror movies, and I was like, well, that was a little tame for 2023.
No, it's true. Was an interesting one, and before I start talking too much, I should say to our listeners, if I sound a little funny, if I need to mute myself to sneeze, or if I sound like I've got a Strepsil lozenge in my mouth, it's because I have a cold. I'm so sorry, but I'm gonna do my best to power through. That's my own version of horror, I guess. Gross out horror. But yeah, no, you're right, because at the time as well, Stanley Kubrick, in the 70s, I guess now that's as true as well, but you really didn't want the horror label. So he tried really hard to push it as like futuristic sci-fi dystopia. And at the time, it got banned. It was so horrific. And particularly the scenes of like sexual violence, the rapes and stuff were considered so shocking. It was beyond anything any other horror film was doing. Even like psychological horrors like Psycho, it's not as explicit as this.
Right.
And now we watch it and it's like, you get it on in the background and you're like, oh yeah, that's a bit like this murder, true crime show that's on now. And
Mm-hmm.
that's not even considered a like difficult rating. You'd let your teenage kids watch those shows. It's
Yep.
weird.
It was very strange. It was I mean, like I knew what I was watching was I like the movie. Don't get me wrong. I just am going back to how you were saying in the 70s. I mean, I believe in America it actually initially got an X rating
Mm.
because there was at the time too much of the just nudity, the sex, and obviously the rape, especially the rape scene or
Mm.
scenes that are in the movie. Now, I mean, I know he supposedly cut out like 30 seconds of one scene, which got it down to an R rating. And I keep thinking now, I'm like, I don't know if it would have, I mean, it would have been an R rating for sure, just from curse words and dealing with that. But God, there's so many things that go in that direction where I don't even know if that would be considered shocking anymore.
Mm.
But it does, it is a very London film to me. I mean, it is a very, and I think it's because they do try to touch on the government aspect of it a little bit. I think, reading, I was telling you, I went down the rabbit hole of this movie, and it's from a book, and the book was really focused on the government angle of it and this totalitarian government running everybody's lives. And so the brainwashing scenes and all of that, like once you get past the first 20 minutes of him being in the droogs and them just randomly beating up people and causing all this havoc. Yeah, the brainwashing scenes actually were the best scenes in the movie to me. Like now, like I thought it was very interesting.
Yeah, that you mentioned the London thing, and that's the thing that I find most interesting about this. A lot of people talk about all the various symbology and the sort of future aspect of this. And like you said, it's based on a book with the same name by Anthony Burgess. It's like a little novella. If anybody wants to read it, it's not a hard read. But it's really different. The book is much more like the dystopian society, almost 1984-esque. The government's in control of everything and is trying to control people and how they behave. And that was very much of its sort of time, this huge issue with like counterculture and government trying to keep students from protesting and people from trying to do that. And so Stanley Kubrick goes, oh, I'm setting this, in the future. It's very, futuristic dystopian society that hasn't happened yet. But then you watch it and it's so London in the 60s and 70s. It's so swinging London that it's like a time capsule. I mean, from the very nerdy perspective of me, some of the buildings he uses even are like, he uses, it's not there anymore, but where he's like pushing his friends off into the water, that is very much the brutalist architecture that was coming around at that time that was really popular, that everyone was into. He uses the Chelsea drugstore for a scene, which was like literally built in the late 60s as this new revolutionary. It's so London in the 60s that it can't be futuristic at all to me, aside from the fact that Londoners didn't just regularly have weird headsets put on them to force them to watch horrible things.
Well, and he didn't change up the clothing. Like,
No.
so the clothing was very 60s or that swinging late 60s feel. So, like, you're definitely, no matter what, you're in that vibe of like, this is the 60s. This is like that early 70s era. I mean, he's walking around the Chelsea drugstore like Austin Powers. He's got like this suit and he's doing his thing. So it was very comical. But I actually found the scenes that like, so he, him and his droogs go and they cause all these, they're beating up a homeless man. They're getting in fights with rival gangs. They're then going out to the countryside and like stalking families and getting into all this stuff. Well, he gets caught, right? So then he goes to prison and he's like, I'm going to get out of this prison. This won't be hard or whatever. But he gets an opportunity to do that trial or to try to, I guess, doctor or scientist was like, we had this way of making people like basically adverse to violence and like it'll stop it dead in its tracks. So he goes to this thing and that actually is kind of like unsettling when you have your eyes pried open and you're forced to watch, all that negative and violent stuff. I mean, anything from rape, sex, violence, and he's forced to watch, he's screaming for it to stop and he's just getting it like, no, you've got, 3 more days of this.
Yeah, and they're injecting him with a drug that makes him nauseous as well, so they're
Right.
like making him sick. This is an interesting thing. You brought you sort of said it, but not sort of directly said it. But you're right. What they do to Alex, to me nowadays, having watched a lot of horror, is far more upsetting and horrific to watch than. This is a terrible thing to say, particularly as a woman, but then to watch the other scenes, because I know intellectually that it didn't happen. These people aren't
Right.
being raped. These people aren't being beat up. It's, I don't know, somehow that makes it desensitized, I guess, because I see, and we have it in so many other like crime films, and it's just
Right.
everywhere. Beating people up and sadly and raping them is a really standard thing to put in like any drama, even. Whereas that really aggressive brainwashing isn't something we see a whole lot of still, even in films. What do you think? Does that make sense?
Yeah, no, I think it does make sense, but it also, I think, because neither of us are like, no, that one is okay and one is not. We are not saying that at all. But I do think that they make it lighthearted in the scene because they're singing, he's dancing, they're doing things where it takes away from this. If it was a gritty scene where it was, you're in a house in the middle of the country in the middle of the night, right? So there's not a lot of noise going on. So if it was gritty and quieter, I think it would elicit more of a like reaction, because there are movies that I will watch and like that part will affect me strongly, and it didn't in this, because I think they're looking at it comically, so they're like singing and kicking the guy and then cutting off pieces of clothing, where it's like it's horrible, but it very much is a movie, right? You know that it's just part of the shtick of what they're doing. I wasn't scared by the forced brainwashing part, but it was unsettling, almost like a Jigsaw or like the Saw movies, because you have the contraptions and it's holding you down, you're strapped in, and so it has that what do you call it? Where you're claustrophobic, like, or like when you don't want it and you can't move, like. So I think it kind of they took that scene more seriously, or it made me at least feel more uncomfortable as well.
No, you're right. You got me thinking. The soundtrack as well really plays into that, because a lot of the other the sections of the film, sorry, the soundtrack it's either lighthearted or it's like party music, or it's like hyped up, so it doesn't match what you're seeing in the same way.
Mm-hmm.
But absolutely, when he's in
It was
the
like, so
scene,
Beethoven's. Well, I don't follow classical. It's Beethoven or Mozart, and it's it's a very famous song. Like I've heard it since I was born. But like they'll play this classical music, or he's singing in the rain. It's like he's dancing around, and
yeah,
so it does make it like it's a different vibe. But a very interesting movie. Like I think when I first watched it growing up, I was like, oh, it's an English movie about like teenage thugs.
yes,
And now I watch it and I'm like, well, that's interesting. It was like the counterculture and like the government, and how do they get past? They're working on a way to get, to make them more, or just not make them follow the government, but like, we'll uncrowd the prisons this way and we'll get them just to all act nicely.
yeah. I mean,
So,
you're right, because it's like the message behind it is supposed to be they like fit in with society better,
right.
isn't it?
Yeah,
I
it's
wonder,
interesting.
because that was the thing I loved about Burgess's novel, is that his message, and I don't want to ruin it for anybody, so spoiler alert for the 1962 novel that came out. But in
With a
Burgess's
60-year-old
novel,
novel.
yeah, the thing is that the government sort of it ends up being pointless what the government did. There's not, they attempt to brainwash him. The brainwashing basically means he doesn't fit in society anymore, because he doesn't belong with any of the people that he used to be friends with, and he doesn't know how to fit in with anyone else. So he's a loner, an outsider to the extreme. And then eventually the brainwashing wears away, and he gets back to like sort of doing it, but he gets older and he decides, like, I've outgrown this, I'm not interested in anymore. So like the government didn't need like he's sort of naturally, society, as he grows, he fits in wherever it is he fits in. And in the movie it doesn't really have that aspect of it, and I was wondering whether you think that adds anything. I like the novel for that better, but I don't know whether it works in a movie, if you know what I mean.
Um, that's an interesting thought. I mean, I haven't really thought about that. Yeah, I was going to ask something similar to you.
Oh.
And maybe we can keep talking that direction. But another reason this movie is very English to me is growing up in America. Is there ever a time? Okay, I don't know how to phrase this. Okay, so I'll read like British trash Daily Mail, stuff like that. Like, I love it. It's great. It's just entertaining. Who doesn't want to know where Beckham bought his pants from? So, but there you'll see articles every once in a while of is it antisocial behavior, or they're charging people with it, like the families of like these people have had multiple. They got their council house taken away because of antisocial behavior, and they're being loud and they're doing all this stuff. I don't remember growing up, and I still don't remember seeing that in America, where like if you just had a crazy neighbor there, you're just like, oh, we walk the other way to school.
Yeah.
We didn't have cops come and like kick you out of your home because you were an asshole, like so it's very interesting going along lines of that, of like the government trying to change that, where we're just like, yeah, build more prisons, man.
Yeah.
Like it's full, build more. Why fix the problem? We're like they're trying to like fix the problem, but I don't know. I mean, I definitely think there's, going back to your question, there's always that hint of um younger, like teenagers, like causing a lot of the issues.
Mm.
They tend to not think ramifications, but even if you're kind of older, you start being like, okay, I mean, that's kind of stupid. Like you just mature, right?
Yeah.
So maybe the book seems more of like a realistic approach to it, where the movie kind of goes where they like almost apologize, like, oh, we're sorry, we shouldn't have done this, but now that you're cured, like we're going to help you, we're going to try to fix this, and then it kind of it finally goes away at the end. But I don't know if I didn't answer your question. I just threw out another question and an observation, so I apologize.
No, don't worry. It's one of those questions that's maybe unanswerable because you'd have to see the movie and how it was made to know whether it would be in more interesting one way or the other. But I think you're right. There is probably that thing of like, oh, that seems really realistic, as opposed to the government being like, oh, we screwed up terribly and we're so sorry, and you're like,
Yeah.
But no, you're right with the ASBOs, antisocial behavior orders, for our American listeners. I don't know if I'm going to get the history behind this right, because I have learned this, I'm not going to lie, through the combination of living here for part of it and the horror movie response to it. So I apologize if I'm slightly off on the decades. I know the history in the horror films of this, but ASBOs were definitely at least taken to a new level, if not specifically defined as the ASBOS order, under Tony Blair. And so you have a lot of horror films in the early 90s basically responding to this weird order by making horror films where it's just teenagers invade your house. It's the series of Hoodie Horrors we talked about with F.
Yeah.
And it's funny because you're right. Horror films very often focus on teenagers. I mean, this is 20 years before Blair, and it's teenagers wreaking havoc. And it's still that really, I think you're right, very British sense of there's decorum in a way that there just isn't back home.
Mm-mm.
We're not like, we have cotillion in the South, but we are not a fancy people. We we are we can like you said, the neighbor sets fire to his lawn and you're like, that sucks, he's an idiot.
That's
Neighbor
Ed,
sets fire to the lawn here, and like you get a petition, and like it's hurting the
right?
grass and it doesn't look nice. And you're right, there's a weird sense, not weird, a non-American sense of decorum here that you kind of follow. But I'm always bringing this up. America does have it in a really weird way. We do not have what is it called? Like neighborhood societies here. You know how like you have when you live somewhere in America and like people can say whether your decor is bad outside your house.
100% homeowners
That's
associations.
the one. Homeowners. We
Yeah.
don't have that here.
Oh, really?
And you guys do. So like America
Yeah.
does have this weird sense of the ASBO in a very niche place.
We have it as like peer settings, right? So like I can't just paint my house.
So weird.
I'd have to get approval. My fence in the backyard right now, little inside information on me, has fallen down because the fence was built when the house was built. It's on a little bit of a slope and it rotted. And so I did not get it repaired in time. What we've done is because we can't just go hire a fencing company without my neighbors to the left, the right, and the back to approve the fence that is already in the homeowners associations to be a certain level, a certain construct. So I still have to get them to say it's okay because they're going to see it. So I have basically chicken wire that keeps the dogs in, which is fine. But yes, we have homeowners, but at the same time, there's a big push. Not everywhere has that either. You can live in places like, I know you see the stereotypical, like, anytime they show anything in America and run down, you'll see like the neighbor with like 4 cars on cinder blocks and what have you. And there are houses like that because if you're not in a homeowners association, that's your property. You can do what you want with it.
Yeah, that's true.
But it is, I mean, we are a fancy people in certain ways.
Yes.
There is not an overall collective decorum where like,
I think
this
that's
is
what I mean.
right.
A level of expectation of fanciness. You're absolutely right. obviously we can be very fancy.
Ours is also very, I would say, this is going away from Clockwork Orange and maybe more into society, but I would say ours is more material, where in Britain, I guess, and it might be that way there as well, because I know like there's footballers and they've got their 7 Lamborghinis and, everything, but like the royals just, like, it's, you have to act a certain way, like it's a way you act, where like here it's like what you have, like the Kardashians like have all this stuff. I wouldn't say that they're super classy, but I would say that they're kind of, because they don't do anything and make billions of dollars, that they're,
Yeah.
people look to them as like high society. I don't know, they're new money, right? Isn't that like new money versus old money?
Yeah, that's very much a thing here as well. There's a sense of posh versus wealthy. So I don't know how true this is outside of the social circles I run, but when someone refers to someone as posh, to me, and this again is an American learning it from a certain group of people in whatever class structure, but posh is like, oh, you might not have money, but you grew up well and you say the right things and you went to Oxford or Cambridge and Eton or wherever, and so you all like know all the same people. Whereas you can have money, but you don't know like the right place to go or the right thing to say or the right fork to use, and so you're sort of different. And I think in the States, you're right, there's a lot less attention paid to those little things and a lot more paid to like, oh, we're all evidently on the same line because you can afford this Lamborghini and I can afford this Lamborghini and our kids go to a really expensive school. Whereas back
Yeah.
home here, and my friend Steph, actually, I always bring her up, but I don't think she'd mind this. Her kids go to private school, but because they have a sort of Austrian background as well, they don't go to like the same holidays as everyone else, and it's a bit of a thing because
Hmm.
they grow up in a slightly different way, which makes sense for their family, but is like not traditionally the English private school person place to go. So weird,
Interesting.
fascinating,
Yeah.
and I love
That's a
how
whole
many.
socio that's a whole sociological like side of it that I do find interesting, but it's also like, I think here, and we'll get back to the movie, I promise. This is going to retort to that, but like, I think here it's more of like, I feel it's a lot of a what have you done for me lately.
Oh, yeah.
So because our country is so many people moving into it, it's not like you were brought up here or went to this school. Like you could be brought up, do whatever, and then you make something of yourself here, and you can run in the same circles as someone who family has been here for generations, has built, monster company and empire, but you can be in that same social setting. Like you're not ostracized because you didn't go to the right schools or go to wherever.
Mm.
Okay, but back to Clockwork Orange.
Well, no,
So were they upper class or were they middle class or were they just run of the mill? Like how? Because there is a scene in that movie where he comes back from prison. They've sold all of his belongings. He again goes home and his family has rented out his room. So he's come back to this world where he's like, what the hell? Everything's different.
yeah, totally. And it's he's supposed to be middle class in the book, and I think they tried to translate that in the movie correctly. So they do have like a nice-ish apartment, but like you said, they rent out the room, so it's not like they're like the wealthy of the wealthy. But it's that kind of weird fear, because we've just been talking about how social class is such a thing here. It feeds into so many horror movies. It's a fear of that, the middle class suddenly getting like access and power in the 60s post World War II, and you have this new generation coming in and getting power and attention and changing things up, and people are really afraid of it. And there's a lot of horror movies where that's at the center of it, like Dracula AD 1972 is one of them, or like I Don't Want to Be Born. There's all these movies where like social mobility or the new generation are terrifying just for being, that new generation. They aren't necessarily as bad as Alex. But obviously, the flip side of that is you've made me realize this. Is it uncomfortable for anyone else that Alex starts out as this horrible person? They brainwash him, and then he gets kicked out of his house, and then beat up by homeless guys, and then beat up by his best friend, and you feel bad for him. You feel bad for a guy who's done horrible things, just as bad, if not worse, than the stuff that's happening to him. And that made me uncomfortable. Did that
Did
make
it?
you uncomfortable?
Interesting. No, I definitely. It's funny. I always like a story that has the. I will get it wrong with protagonist, antagonist, but like the main character being a good bad guy.
Mm.
So like you are rooting for, like at the end you find yourself kind of rooting for him, like, oh, that's not fair, or like, come on, like he's so yeah, no, it's I mean, I definitely noticed that, and I also had to laugh because his two buddies became cops,
Yeah.
and it just, that, I guess that's just a worldwide phenomenon of like these teenagers are kind of buttheads and like rambunctious and wild, and now they're all state troopers and cops. So I don't know. It just makes me laugh. Like, oh yeah, good. But yeah, I mean, it is interesting. But I've definitely seen that before in other films, other TV shows, and such. So, um, but yes, I mean, I did recommend Clockwork Orange. I don't necessarily look at it as a horror movie. Definitely more of like a thriller, or like a, I don't know, just like psychological horror, maybe, if you wanted. I mean, it go down that line, but I really enjoyed it, and I actually enjoyed it for just different reasons this time. So I was happy that we watched it.
Oh, it's so interesting. So what were the reasons that you loved it the first time, and what's the different ones now?
Um, I like the psychological part of it now. I guess I never really saw that way before. I just was like, oh, thugs, and then like, yeah, they brainwash him, and he's good. I always liked the beginning of the movie, and I never really like the end of the movie was great, but like I always just thought like the beginning of the movie was like the fun part of the movie, and then it's going to try to tell me a story, or be like try to tell me why this is wrong or whatever. Where I just want to be entertained, like you watch movies like that. Sometimes I just want an hour and a half of being entertained. I don't care about a lesson or anything like that. So I think that was it. Like it was like I said, when I watched it the first time, I don't want to say I was 10, but I was definitely very young. Probably too young to be watching, to be honest. But that was how we grew up. We were kind of allowed to watch whatever we wanted. But it was just always that very like British movie. And then like I also read um autobiographies are a nice way of saying these books from soccer hooligans in the 70s and 80s. Like apparently that's okay just to write about your exploits of just being in fights every weekend. But I always find that like counterculture, I've always found that very interesting. Mafia in America, any kind of counterculture to like the normal society, right? So, but now when I watch this movie, I was really enjoying the second half of the movie. The government has done this. He has now been fixed, but then it didn't fix anything. Like it fixed something for the government, but like he's not, like, I don't know. Just
No, you're right.
I can't articulate it. I apologize. It's great for a podcast, but I can't articulate it.
No, I think I know what you mean because you've talked about it in the lead up to this. Totally.
Yeah.
Problem. And since you've mentioned the whole like not sure if it's horror thing anyway, that was something we talked about. We were talking about our lists for Christmas, trying to figure out
Yep.
which ones
Oh
we
yeah.
consider horror. So I'm curious, how do you want to do this? Do you want to like go one for one with each other, or would you like the whole list, or what do you think?
Yeah. I think we go like 5 to 1.
Okay.
And then so our fifth best one, and then we go down. We can talk a little bit about them, but
Cool.
um
All right.
I've got, what's that?
What's your fifth best one?
Oh, okay. I got my list. I've written it down here. So I will say this. I found finding 5 watchable, repeatable things I'll enjoy watching movies that strictly Christmas movies, more difficult than I thought I would. There are plenty out there. It's a Wonderful Knife, The Gingerbread Man. There are movies out there, but I'm like, are they? Do they rank? So then I kind of did like a little NCAA bracket of like, would this one beat this one? Nope, it's out. And so I had a longer list, and then I've kind of narrowed it down. So my number 5 movie is going to be the 2015 Krampus.
Nice. that made my long list, but
Okay.
not the 5. It just got edged out. But yes. Okay, so
Yeah.
for our listeners, if you haven't heard it, very quick summary of what that's all about.
Right. So that is the more recent. There's a lot of Krampus movies out there, but it has Tony Collette and Adam Scott, two recognizable actors today, and goes off of the Bavarian, the German Krampus, where it's this half goat, half monster man, like comes and like steals bad kids, and
Yeah.
so that's it, monster movie, right? So it's just, but it's a mythological monster. Like when our brother lived in Germany for a while, he would tell about like these big people would dress up as Krampus and like carry these sacks, and like people would like cheer them, but like it would have to be horrifying for little kids. I know why Germans are the way they are now. Like this is normal for them. So yes, but no, the Krampus made it as my number 5 spot.
That is a great
So,
one. And I should say there's little bits of humor scattered in that one. It's not a
oh
horror
yeah,
comedy, but it's got some like good jokes and stuff
yeah,
as well, which is great.
they keep it light.
I'm glad you mentioned that one because it was on my long list, but it's not. So my number 5, I will admit this is entirely self-serving, being a London horror writer. It is not the world's greatest movie, but it is the only London Christmas movie, so it had to be on my list. It's called Don't Open Till Christmas. It's
Oh,
1984, and it's like Caroline Munro is in it. You know, the like classic. She was a Hammer actress. She doesn't even like it. Like if you ask Caroline Munro about it, she's just like, "Oh my god, Don't Open Till Christmas." It's a you know Christmas slasher movie. It's what you expect, but midway through there's like a song for reasons unknown. But it's very, if you go in going, this is not going to be a good movie, but it's going to be Carolyn Monroe, it's going to be entertaining, you'll have an okay hour and 20 minutes. It's amusing, it's fine, but it's in London. So that's my pitch for is that I
okay,
love
hey,
London.
that works. That works. So if I'm looking for something to entertain myself for an hour and a half, and I don't set the bar too high, just am like gonna go in and it's Christmas themed, and it's there we go.
Yeah, what you see
Okay.
is what you get.
Okay. So number 4 on my list is almost chosen for the box cover at the rental place or the movie poster. I've seen the movie. The movie is exactly what you think it's going to be. But Silent Night, Deadly Night, 1984 Christmas slasher.
Not just that, this is one of the it like they've made 9 of them. It's one of those ones that
Yes.
like was super popular. Sorry, I'll let you continue, but like
No, that's all I would say about it is there was so much clamor for this movie that they made like 7 or 8 more. Like I don't know, but I just remember that was like it was typical slasher Christmas, and the scene of like Santa kind of going down the chimney and you got an axe like hanging out like so I gotta just throw that in there because if you just want like and it was the 80s American like it's in sequels, man, it was like pop them out like slasher film, people liked it, let's keep going. And so yeah, they definitely made it. But yeah, so I'm gonna go Silent Night Deadly Night, the 1984 one that started it all, as my number 4 movie.
that is an awesome one. I'm so again, you've picked some that didn't make my list, but we're on the
Good.
like long list, so I'm loving that because it's really good. And it is, like you said, it's like the Halloween, sorry, of horror Christmas movies.
Yes.
There's
Yeah,
so
that's what I
many
would
of them.
classify it as. Yep.
Yeah. So my number 4 is no, sorry, I just did my 4, didn't I? No, I
No,
didn't.
you did number 5.
Okay, good. You can tell I'm on the medicine. My number 4, it's not number 4 because it's not a really awesome movie. It's number 4 because, and this is something I mentioned to you earlier, it's not super horrific, Violent Night.
Okay.
So it came out last year, 2022, and we both love this film. I know that, but
Mm-hmm.
basically what it is Santa is real, and he falls asleep in a house that gets basically home invaded. It's a really wealthy family, and a bunch of people are gonna rob the crazy wealthy family that has a vault of money, and Santa's stuck in the middle, and he diehards the crap out of all of them.
Yep.
Now, I know that sounds basically Die Hard. I would not class as a horror movie, but there were some degrees of the deaths, 2 in particular, that I think push it into that horror zone. Guy getting star in the eye and then electrocuted to death was pretty amazing. And then the final one, I don't want to ruin it for anyone who
Yep.
hasn't seen it, but what Chris has just done, I'll give you everything. That is a very gruesome death.
One of my favorite death scenes in any movie. Like they're so great.
And so it's the degree of that to me that pushes it into horror rather than it being like slashery horror, ghost horror. What do you think? Does that count?
So I love the movie. I mean, you know that already. Like I've recommended it to people. I really enjoy that movie, and it'll be on rotation for Christmas for years. I didn't put it even on my long list because I kind of wanted to stick with like the classic horror genres. But yes, no, I totally get it. When you have a make-believe man who is magic and can do things, then you kind of do go into the fantasy realm, right? Which then can kind of lean towards horror. So I have no problem with this pick. It just didn't make my cut of my thing. So I like that movie a lot. So
awesome. But yeah, that's my number 4. And I think recommend it to anyone. Great time.
All right. So number 3, going along the lines that you just did, I'm going to go recency bias here.
Okay.
And when I go recency bias, it's because I watched this movie last night.
Nice.
I really enjoyed it and will probably watch it again this weekend. It is the 2023 There's Something in the Barn.
I do not know this. I'm going to write this down.
So, it is a Norwegian movie. Well, it has American actors in it. The only actor that I actually recognized was from the TV show Silicon Valley or from the show Freaks and Geeks, so both American shows. But he is an American dad. They inherit this Norwegian house and barn, and they're going to go like kind of live their lives over in Norway. Well, there are elves that live in the barn, and if you upset the elves go bad.
Oh my God, I love it.
And the elves don't like Christmas or all the lights and all the music and all the partying. And the boy is the only one that kind of understands that. So then there is a townsfolk versus the elves, and the elves it is fantastic. I won't want to give anything else away, but it is not going to win the Academy Award. It is not going to gross the most money of any movie. But if you want an hour and a half of just a horror movie, it's kind of like it's little person horror, like because they're elves. So the movie is very. I thought it was a kids movie for the first 20 minutes I watched it because of the way that it's very family and they're out of their element and they're in Norway, and then all of a sudden the elf stuff, and I'm like, this movie's fantastic. So I enjoyed it. It is fun. There is something in the barn. I would totally recommend it.
That sounds awesome. I love anything that's like off the wall and a bit different.
Oh yeah,
and that sounds
totally fun. Watch it. Totally worth whatever they're charging on Prime and Vudu.
Yes.
It's not going to be the Oppenheimer $20 for a rental. Like you're going to be able to watch it for like $5, but it's definitely worth it.
That sounds awesome. Heck yeah. Okay, then on my my number 3 is a classic, I think. Anyway, so it's Black Christmas. Do you know it?
That was on my long list.
Yeah, 1974. So it's kind of everything you expect, but I love the cast in it. There's some really cool people in the cast. My favorite, honestly, there's John Saxon. He's the cop in everything. When you see him, you're like, oh, you're a cop in every movie ever. He's Freddy's dad. He's in Tenebrae. But like the cast is really amazing, and it is Christmas slasher. It's exactly what you expect to see. It's good fun. It's very American, I think, as well. Okay. So a little bit different. Yeah. But yeah,
I like that pick.
Oh, good. I'm glad.
I like that pick. No, that was good. That was definitely on my when we were talking earlier before we started recording my that 3 that kind of got kicked out at the very end. I was like, these other ones beat it out. So yeah, for me.
Awesome. I love that. All right, number 2, we're getting close to the top.
We are getting close to the top. So I enjoy this movie a ton. It's the 2015. I'm blanking on the word, but it's the Christmas Horror Story.
That's my
You know what I'm talking about?
number one.
What's that?
That's my number one.
Oh, is it? Okay. I love it.
It's an anthology, I think is the word you're
Anthology.
looking
Good
for.
Lord, my brain.
Okay, tell him about it, because I'm so jealous. This is my number one.
No. I want you. We'll both talk about it, but like it's. Well, first of all, William Shatner narrates through, or kind of ties everything
Right?
together. So you have that. Let me talk as slow as humanly possible to like as a radio host, and he's kind of the narrator where basically three different stories happening in the same small town are intertwined. Um, but to open up a movie going to the North Pole where there's a storm and there's craziness and you see Santa Claus. I'm not giving anything away. It's the first scene of the movie. Santa Claus is like, oh, Blitzen, my old friend, and he's getting ready for Christmas. And then he hears like this really weird knocking and turns around and has a gash down his face and picks up like this axe, like a sickle. And I'm like, this movie is going to just be awesome. And it was. And it was.
It is. It's so good. And the only thing I'll add is I think as anthologies go, I think the story combination's really good. Like everybody always says, of course, with an anthology you have like a weaker one, but I think everyone will have their favorite and least favorite. But I think they're all pretty good. Like they're very different. You have some stuff that's supernatural, you have some stuff that's not. You've got some stuff there's more supernatural maybe than not. But you've got like a teen-based story and parents
Yeah.
story and like you said with Shatner, and there's like lots of stuff you can't see because he's on the radio, and
Yep.
so there's a lot going on, and I loved it. I love that's your number two. It was my number one. I love it so much.
Well, I didn't mean to steal your thunder for number one. Jeez.
Wow, I'm so thrilled though. It means like it must be good if it's in our top, not only top
Yeah.
five but our top two. Like it's great. It's
Well,
so
now
good.
your top two is coming up, so you might as well just steal my number one because I can't imagine that you don't have my number one as your number two.
Oh, really? Okay, because mine's a weird one. I don't know.
Oh, interesting. Okay, go ahead. What's your
I
number
don't
two?
know. My number two, and I'm not sure if it counts or not. So I need like a ref to decide whether
Okay.
it counts. It's another anthology film. It's called Tales from the Crypt, 1972. The whole film is not a Christmas film, but the Joan Collins Christmas segment is really good. She's really good in it. It's really creepy. It's totally crazy. So as a Christmas horror, that little segment I think is really
Okay.
good. But does the whole movie count? Because obviously none of the rest of it is Christmas.
I'll give it to you because
Okay.
those Tales from the Crypts I feel like are mini movies, right? So
Right?
to
But
me,
I
I'm
love
in.
that one.
Okay.
I'm
I've not
feeling,
seen it. Like I feel like I've seen it, but I couldn't go ahead and talk about it.
yeah, it's a good one. It's a really good one. It's very 70s, and obviously, like, Joan Collins she's like all bouffanted up and rich lady, and basically, rich lady wants to kill her husband for Christmas. And it just gets
Okay.
weirder from there. It's great. I'm kind of curious now because you thought it'd be on my list, whether it's one of the ones on this list that didn't make it into the final one. Is it Gremlins?
It's Gremlins.
Yes, I know. I thought it was. That
I had
one
to.
is like.
I had
So I've
to.
got my like numbers, and you can see that I was like, oh, these are definitely in, and then it was between Gremlins and Black Christmas, and I was like.
No, I had to pick Gremlins. It's nostalgic. It's monster movie. It was a monster movie that the whole family could watch.
Yeah.
Like my wife will tell like, let's watch Gremlins. Like usually it's around Halloween. I'm like, no, let's watch it at Christmas time. Like, are you kidding me? So yeah, no, Gremlins is my number one. But I am curious now with your list.
Yes.
And I know we're running close on time, but what ones didn't make your list? Like, what were some of the first ones out, if you will? Like, what were some of the ones that you cut? Like, Gremlins got cut. What other ones got cut?
Gremlins made it to the last draw, and that was a tough one. Honestly, if the London movie hadn't made it on, Gremlins would have.
Okay.
But I'm trying to see it because you talked about Krampus, you talked about Silent Night, Deadly Night. Oh, await further instructions. This was a controversial choice. So it made it into my top 10, but not the top 5. That was the first to go in the top 5 discussion.
What is this movie?
So it was done in, what's the year? It was 2018, so pretty recently. And basically, you open on, and everybody, you see these different houses. All of them are staying at home at Christmas, and it's really tense. And you're like, what the hell? And then slowly you learn that they've got their like TV telling them that they need to stay inside and await further instructions. And so you're stuck in your house with your family at Christmas in like the most stressful, you have no idea what's going on. You don't know how many other people are alive in the world. You don't know if it's the end of the world. You don't know if what's happening. And most of these people are not in the world's like nicest dynamics or families. And
Okay.
it's just super tense. A lot of people do not like this movie. I will put that out there. But I found it really stressful to watch because of how tense the entire film is. And then it just gets worse and worse and worse as these people are stuck with each other, not knowing what's going on with the world. So I thought it was really good.
When was this movie made?
2018. So fairly
Okay.
recently. I
want to watch that movie. I want to see it now because I've not even heard of it.
It is on, or at least in the UK, it is on Amazon, and it's not, because it wasn't a blockbuster hit, it's not super expensive. But I think the quality is really good. Like, it's a pretty good quality film. I thought it was good. I thought it was stressful.
No, that's. See, you have like thinking like more psychological and like that, like where I'm going like my short list, my list of like things that got knocked out was Jack Frost.
Oh, I haven't seen it.
Serial killer that like his soul gets caught into a snowman who uses his carrot nose to kill people. Santa's Sleigh, which is
Santa's Sleigh is good.
Bill Goldberg, the wrestler, and it's literally just like slasher film. But I will also say I almost put another family movie in there.
Oh.
And this one almost knocked out. It was kind of like it would have been a top one, so I would have probably knocked out the There's Something in the Barn at number 3.
Ooh, okay.
Because I would actually watch There's Something in the Barn with my family. There's not, I mean, it's a horror movie, but there's nothing like kids could watch it, like teens, preteens maybe. But Nightmare Before Christmas, I guess it's just that it's always on in our house at some point through the year. And and Tim Burton's creepy, and like his movies have a kind of a level of creep to them. Yeah. So, like, I don't know, but I knocked it off because I'm like, that's not really a horror Christmas movie. So I didn't make it for my grounds of like what constitutes the movie, but like we always watch it around Christmas.
Yeah, I'd say it's a classic, and I'm like, I absolutely love it. Weirdly, I usually watch it like in the interim between Halloween and Christmas, like while I'm waiting for one to go into the other.
It's a bridge movie. I got you.
But yeah, that's a great one, actually. That's awesome. I'm curious, did something like Gingerbread Man or like any of the really terrible schlocky but like fun ones make it onto the last 10 for you? Make it far?
Oh yeah, Gingerbread Man and Jack Frost were both of my just kind of my like low seed that's playing the number 1 seed in like the NCAA tournament. You know, it's kind of like, hey, you got the chance, and then like I'm like, well, I've seen the Gingerbread Man once. I'm never gonna watch that movie again. I mean, it was fine, but it's like Thanksgiving or like one of those movies where like I got to watch one time. Jack Frost, I remember watching it. I think it was a '90s movie. I want to say it was like '90s. It was probably like freshman years of college. 96, 97 maybe is when I saw it. That one I thought could have made it in the top 5, but then I just was like, nah. Like there's other ones that I think are like just better. So
no, it's a tough call on some of them. We were talking before, and I wanted to make sure I put it into the podcast because it's just a great movie. But it's another movie that's not a horror, but when I first saw it, it scared me. Was Scrooged with Bill Murray. It's definitely a comedy, and even to this day, though, when I watch it, there's like it's the 80s. Please watch this film. These are sort of spoilers, but how have you not seen Scrooged?
It's a Christmas Carol, is what the story is.
So it's fine. So like, what am I ruining? The ghost of Christmas Future pulls aside his like Bill Murray pulls aside his little like thing to see what's underneath because he thinks it's a costume. And there's these weird, deformed like people that scream at him living in the ribcage, and that terrified me at, oh God, what was
Yep.
I, 5? Like really young, we watched that.
You probably saw it at the movie theater. I bet your dad took us all to the movies
Right.
and you were there and you were just happened to be super young and probably petrified and had nightmares from that.
Yeah, that was one of my early nightmares, and it's not a horror movie. But and then at the end of the film as well, they have them with holding these apples, and they're supposed to be jolly. And I'm sorry, but that was just as creepy.
That's interesting. Neither of us had a Christmas Carol on there, and I tried so hard. I've only seen Christmas Carol. I know the concept of a Christmas Carol, but I've really only seen the Mickey Mouse Christmas Carol, the Muppets Christmas Carol, and Scrooged. So like I can't say like is it George Scott? He did like one
Oh
as
yeah.
Ebenezer Scrooge, and then there was a new one that came out on the local TV here, FX, with Andy Serkis. Is that his name? He like
Oh.
plays like all the, and then Guy Pearce, and so it's called The Christmas Carol. It was like probably 2-3 years ago, but I just get like, I'm like, yeah, I know the story. Like it's not, there's nothing really hooking me to it. So I couldn't put a Christmas Carol in there, but that's a actual story about 3 ghosts. And one of them shows Ebenezer Scrooge's death. The other one shows you what you screwed up. And the other one shows you the world around you. It's like, that should be a horror movie. Like, that makes sense that the story is a horror story.
Yeah, I mean that's the thing. It's a classic ghost story, isn't it?
Right.
You're being haunted. It's not, and he's supposed to, like, the very first ghost. It doesn't even like show him the world. Is his old friend is dead and like is trying to scare him into being nice.
Right.
So the aim the whole way through is not. It's not like, oh, they're ghosts but they're doing nice things. They are trying to scare him, but it's not a horror movie.
No,
It's so
we couldn't. We
weird.
couldn't. Yeah, I don't know. I could not, in good conscience, put the Mickey Christmas Carol up there.
Yeah. I mean, part of me wants to. My Tony, my partner, is playing Scrooge in the Rochester Theater, and I kind of want him to like bring out blood bags now and be like, that version of Scrooge is a horror movie. But I don't think even Tony Martin can turn it into it ends up being so uplifting in the end, and it's aimed at kids.
Maybe that's it. Maybe it is that ending of the story is what really makes it not a horror movie.
Well, I think as well, and maybe this is just being overly like modern as opposed to Victorian, but even amongst other gothic novels and stuff, it's not quite as creepy. Like the Ghost of Christmas Future is scary. There's no two ways about that. But the Ghost of Christmas Presents, like this big jolly creature who loves to eat food, and like the house is filled with lovely Christmas smells, and he's like really happy, and I don't know. There's like a weird jolly edge to quite a lot of it. Like, okay, Scrooge sees some pretty sad things from his past, but it's like it's not horrific. It's just touching when he sees like his childhood self left abandoned at the school, or like the girlfriend that he let get away. It's upsetting emotionally, but it's more like drama level upsetting rather than horror level upsetting. Whereas like Victorian era Frankenstein, they stitched together a dead guy. Like that's pretty creepy. I don't know. Does that make sense? Like I think it has a softer edge all the way through.
See, yeah, I guess I didn't think about it that way. I was just like, it's 3 ghosts. It's a ghost story.
It is. It's a class. It's simple, straightforward haunting, trying to scare you.
But obviously, whatever it did, it didn't make either of our movies.
Yeah.
And because we did not talk about these beforehand.
No, that's true.
Obviously.
Yeah.
Since I stole your first one. And I knew that, we could have waited. I could have made it to the first.
I'm thrilled though, because it shows that like it's a really good film.
Yeah.
It's worth watching. It's awesome.
It probably should have got better play at the movie. Like it probably should be ranked better, I think.
I'm surprised how few people know it. Like, not that no one knows it, but you would expect like the average person on the street to be like, "Oh yeah, I've seen it. It wasn't for me or whatever." But like the average person on the street has never heard of Christmas Horror Story, and it's so good. And it has Shatner.
Right. I mean, come on. And it's got Shatner, like paycheck grabbing Shatner. Like this is good. Like he's fine. Like I'm not saying anything negative, but like, how did they get him? But
I love every second of the Shatner. Like I love as well. My best Shatner thing is he starts off with the eggnog ostensibly, and it just becomes more and more proportions of. I think it's rum.
Yeah, I think it was rum. It's dark liquor, whatever it was, and then
Yeah.
pretty much there's like no eggnog. Yeah, but he's just.
It's perfect because there's some part of your mind that sort of goes, now, was that actually what happened when he was filming this? Because I could see that. Be just like, damn it, what am I doing with my life? I'm Jewish. Why am I here?
It is very funny to see him like using all the puns, the Christmas puns, and it's William Shatner.
Shatner, baby. Awesome. And on that beautiful note, I think as well, like, yeah, I think that's a perfect way to end. Unless you have any other movies that you've been watching that we haven't had a chance to mention that you would like to recommend. I have one that you recommended to me. Granted, it was in October, but that was really good, and I wanted to make sure I mentioned. Do you have any?
Oh, you tell me. I'm going to rack my brain on what I've been watching.
No worries. So I had to write it down as well because it's been ages now. It was called Dark Harvest. This was the one that you told me about.
Okay.
Yeah. This was Chris recommended it to me back in October. It's sort of got like a ritualistic 50s town where they have to go after a creature that looks like a scarecrow in order to save the town every year. And because if you're a frequent listener, you'll appreciate this. If you're not, I'm so sorry. I press play and frickin' cornfields come up. And I pause it and I take a picture for my Instagram and I go, seriously though, what is with all the corn? But I knew from that moment on I'd love it, and I did. It's a very entertaining film. I really liked Dark
Very
Harvest.
fun, yeah.
So thank you so much for that. That was a really good one.
No, I'm glad you jogged my memory. That would be like the one that I've seen recently that I was like, yep, like that's good.
That's a great one. Oh, perfect. So we've got you guys a whole list of Christmas movies, most of which, although they were on our long lists, we didn't cross over. We just had the one that crossed over, which is
cool. And that would have been that's technically a number one seed, number one, number two. So
yeah, it's pretty great. So yeah, we've given you guys all sorts of stuff to watch. Thank you so much. This was so much fun. I loved being able to do the Christmas movie thing with you as well.
Yes.
So thanks so much for doing it.
No, thank you guys, and let us know when this gets posted, like how crazy we are on these rankings.
Yeah, give us your top 5. If we get enough together, maybe in the new year we can do the post what were the most popular across our listeners. So let us know.
I would love to know. I want people to give me feedback and be like, your recommendations suck. Like, that's fine. Let me know.
Yes. And by the way, fully anticipate people watching Don't Open Till Christmas and going, Lauren, why did you make me watch this? I'm here for you. That's totally okay. Thank you guys so much for listening. We hope you have very happy holidays and a happy new year.
Bye-bye.
If you want to share your thoughts about this episode, please head to our Facebook or YouTube pages. We're grateful to Kukurbit, who made our music. Thank you for listening, and please join us next time for the London Horror Movie Club.